Hey guys, I wanted to do a quick intro to DJing tutorial with the Pioneer 350 set, the CDJ-350 and the DJM-350, the DJM being the mixer and the CDJ being the turntable. I've been doing this for about 2.5 weeks now and really loving the DJing scene. I was producing for about a year, really loved it. Took a lot of time though, and I do this as a hobby, so I decided to make the switch over and honestly couldn't be happier. Really rewarding for the amount of time it takes to do this, but it does take a lot of time to learn. I've soaked in a lot of information over the past 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks or so, and I wanted to share with you guys, and hopefully it'll inspire you and motivate you to go out there and mix some of your own tunes. In this particular tutorial, I wanted to go over just the mixer section. It's still going to be a lot of information. That's why I wanted to separate this into 2 videos. Some of this information I'm getting for you is by just learning personally, by messing around and practicing, which is the key word. However, I also been watching a lot of videos, like I said, by Elliskins, the original DJ tutor. I think he's over there in Europe. He's sponsored by Pioneer amongst some of these other brands. He's got tons of equipment and is extremely knowledgeable. So definitely Google or YouTube him. It's Elliskins. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into the mixer section of this tutorial. It's set up, the 350 set up very simply. It's a 2-channel mixer with 4 master effects. They can only be applied, the keyword there being master, to the master channel. But let's go ahead and start at the top left here. You've got your mic auxiliary, so if you're at a party, you want to plug in an auxiliary source or a mic, you can via a 1/4-inch jack on the back. You've got your switch right here for mic or aux. You've got your volume control and your EQ, your highs and your lows. And here's your on-off switch right here. The mixer's actually turned off right now. Here's the LED startup sequence. Pretty cool there. The on-off button indicated by your LED for on or off. And then down here is dedicated to your headphones and your queuing. And part of the tutorial I wanted to talk about queuing, just a DJ term. Basically you can think about that as what's coming up next, like a cue, a line almost, what's coming up next. Channel 1 being this left channel here, and channel 2 being this right channel here is how it's hooked up. Pretty common sense there. But basically if I had channel 1, Q1, go ahead and enable there, and I would turn this mixing dial all the way to Q at 100%, I'm only going to hear in my headphones, again, because this is headphones only, the Q. I'm only going to hear what's coming up next. It's actually not going to be playing, as long as this is down here, it's not going to be playing through the master channel through the speakers. It's at 50%, then you're going to hear the Q as well as the master. Very good for beat matching in your headphones, just to hear a little bit more precisely about what's going on. And then if all the way to master would obviously be what's going through the speakers currently, what's playing. So then down here also is just the level, the volume control for the headphones, so how loud your headphones actually will be. And then the meat of the mixer here, the EQing knobs. You've got your trims for both channels, which is basically your gain or your volume control per channel. You've got your highs, your mids, and your lows. The highs being your claps, your hi-hats, your snaps, anything up high, the really high frequencies. And then your mids are going to be the meat, which is like your vocals, your synthesizers, your guitar, your instruments, all of that. And then your lows are going to be your kick drums, your low basses, anything that's boomy sounding. That is what your lows are going to be. So that's pretty self-explanatory. And then you've got your volume controls for both of your channels, 1 and 2. All the way up being 100%, 50, 0. And then you have your crossfader. I like to DJ using this at 50%. I don't cut very much, but again, I've only been doing this for a little bit, so I haven't experimented that much with dropping. But this would be great if you're cutting back and forth, track 2 to track 1, vice versa. Or if you're dropping, let's say I have a rise, a nice build, it's building, and then you want to drop into a different chorus line or a different bass line in the other track. So you would basically, theoretically, you could either pause this or just throw this all the way from channel 1 to channel 2 really, really quickly, and it will drop all the way over. And over here, what's really cool about this mixer is that you can actually record onto a USB device right here. You can read the manual on these guys, but here's a record button, basically, your play, your USB stop and eject, etc. Your master level is going to be your master volume that controls both your channels. So both of these are up, essentially. This controls both of them, down, whatever. But it's basically just your main output to your speakers. And then your effects. So I want you to hear, I'm going to scroll through these effects really quickly so you can hear what they do, and I'm going to describe exactly what they are doing. Alright, so basically what's going on here, and I'll turn this on again and explain. So the gate right here, this is basically going to just cut up your sound. It's got a high and low pass filter. If I turn it to the left, you're not going to be able to hear that very well, but what that's doing is only letting the bass come through, and it's chopping it up. If I go to the right, that's the high pass, and it's basically cutting out the bass and letting the high come through and chopped up. The jet is again a filter, high pass, low pass. And again, when I say that, I mean low pass means only bass, low passing through. High pass means only high passing through. That just sounds like it's a flanger, basically, like a jet taking off. A crush is a bit crusher, it's just distortion, also with a built-in filter, low pass, high pass. And then the filter is just your basic high pass, low pass filter. So a little redundant, but at the same time very effective if you use these guys the right way. Really good for transitioning tracks into tracks if you want to muffle a sound, let's say, or a bass line, and then transition into it, or on rises or builds, like I did there in the video. If you're rising, it's really nice to take that high pass filter and then just kind of squeeze it all the way up there, a lot of tension, and then just completely cut off the filter, drops right back in, really impactful. Again, the only downside is that it only affects the master channel. You cannot actually assign it to each individual channel, and you're probably asking yourself, at least maybe asking yourself, why would you want to do that? Well, if I'm actually bringing in this channel 2, I might only want the channel 2 to be at a low pass filter, so I'm only letting the bass come through and it's muffled, and by the time I get here and I'm done doing my EQs and maybe dropping this bass line out and only using this bass line once they're combined together, then it just makes it a little bit more seamless, and it's possible that it could be a little bit cleaner. I know clean and muffle doesn't really make sense together in the same sentence, but it does when you're trying to get it to sound like one continuous track. And that does remind me, going back to these EQs, and this is where the information starts flowing a little bit. These EQs, and this is quoted specifically from Elliskins, that DJ tutor. Google them on, or just YouTube them up. Basically, you've got 2 tracks playing, and if you divide them into 3s, you can just say your highs, your mids, and your lows are each 3 individual tracks that make up that master track, essentially. And basically what you're trying to do is just combine these tracks together so that it sounds like a seamless, continuous flow of music, one long song. Now, I'll do one example, and I won't mess with the highs or the mids here just yet, because that should be a whole completely different tutorial, because DJing just using your volume control is one thing, and bringing in a tune with just your volume controls for your channels versus actually EQing. That's a completely different ballgame. But let's go over just this baseline for example. So let's say I'm queuing up channel 1. As you can see, channel 1 is queued. I've got my cue point set, and all that means, and we'll get into this in the CDJ tutorial, is that's just my point in which I'm going to bring the song in. So if it's an acapella, if it's one more time, so 1 1, if I kept pushing that, it'd be 1 1, or if it's a bass beat, if it's a kick, so it's boom boom, I just want to bring it in on 1 2 3 4. It could be like that. So that's my cue point. Let's say I go, boom, I start, and now I want to mesh this in. I'd slowly, if I had 2 hands here, take out this bass line, possibly increase my mids a little bit, because you don't want the bottom of your track to fall out per se. Each of these controls a volume. I should start with. These 3 different, the high, mid, and the low EQs, if I were to turn them all the way off, even when this channel volume is all the way up, then the sound essentially stops. It's like having this all the way down. It's really cool. That's why this mixer is so great. And there are obviously other mixers that do that, but that's what's so great about this mixer and the EQs is it actually will cut off the sound completely. Why that's useful is because if I'm here at 12 o'clock, and that's where they should be set, that's the default, and I'm bringing this in and I'm starting, let's say on that bass drum, doom, 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 and I have that going here because you obviously have a bass line on this track, depending on where you bring it in. You don't want them to overlap. You don't want the 2 different frequencies, wavelengths of bass drums to overlap each other. Since they're different frequencies, they'll interfere with each other. It might sound like a little bit of phasing. It won't sound good. It'll sound muffled, especially if it's not in time, which it needs to be. So theoretically, you're in time, you're coming up with the volume, and this is coming down. And as this is coming down, you already have your low set. And basically, now you're theoretically matched up. You've got channel 1 and channel 2 going. You've got your highs and your mids still playing, and now you're using this as your bass line. Hopefully that wasn't too much information. And then what you would do is you would basically just drop this out. Or you could just drop all of this out. So you could do this all day. Then you just bring this back to the 12 o'clock position and start from scratch. So that's one way of doing it. There's not one right or wrong way. It's just what I started to do as well. That's what I've seen a lot of these pro producers, these mixers, DJs going through and doing. They'll be all over the place here. They could be anywhere at any time, just using their ears and just seeing what fits. So use your ears, practice, try to F around with some of your equipment if you've got it. If you don't, go get some. This is a really, really fun hobby, and in the next tutorial, we'll go over exactly what we do with these CDJs, and we'll start with some sounds so you guys can actually hear what all of this stuff does.